There we go. All right. Well, welcome to BookEnds, the June edition. The July edition will also be in June in 2 weeks with Monica Lee, and that's our schedule up on the board if you'd like to see it. We have in-person patrons. Thank you for coming, and we also may have some Zoom viewers right now. And this will eventually be uploaded to YouTube, eventually with the other four that have not yet been up on YouTube as well. So this is our guest, Jan D. Payne. She has written Rabbit Moon, a story that takes place on the Navajo reservation. And this is a book that she tells me that she has been working on for over 20 years. She has published it. This is the second time you've published it, so it's a little bit different from the first time. And we're going to go into that on this and other topics too. We're going to talk about, life on the Navajo reservation. We can talk about the writing process as well. Even the Othello epigrams, I'm curious about. So why you chose to have quotes from Othello before each chapter. First, I need to read you this because it's the state requirements. BookEnds is made possible through a grant from the Five Wings Arts Council. So they represent your area too in Cass County and Brainerd and all over this lakes area. Thanks to a legislative appropriation from the Legacy Amendments Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund to, now it's the Friends of the Wadena City Library sponsoring it and helping us fund this. So it helped. That's why the surveys that I passed out are very important, and I wanted it to be a simple survey today. Just let us know those three questions. It helps us justify having programming come to a rural area such as Wadena, and we're very happy to have Jan D. Payne. So welcome.
Thank you.
All right.
Five Wings Arts Council also sponsored the printing of this book.
Oh, they did?
Yes. I wrote a grant and Five Wings Arts Council. It should be in the front of the book there that they are responsible for this printing.
Okay, I didn't get a chance to see. Oh, I did have that up for a while. All right. Well, thank you very much, Five Wings Arts Council, and we our local person there is Vicky. So thank you.
I know Vicky very well.
Yes, she is the hardworking person there who makes sure all the grants are in order to submit to the board, so that they can give, it's basically support arts in this rural area. So we're very happy, and I'm very happy that you were able to get it published through that. So I was listening to this book on Audible, so it's a little bit different from this final version that you have. But who has read this book so far? You have. Okay. So would you mind just telling us a little bit about the story and about 30 seconds to a minute to let everybody know what the story is about?
I grew up on the Navajo reservation. My mother was a school teacher with the Bureau of Indian Affairs in the 60s, 70s, 80s, at that time period. And the very first book that I wrote, where you said 20 years ago, it really was how to write a book in 21 years, I guess. But I had written a lot of the stories over the years for my kids because they were always asking me, our son and our daughter were always asking, tell us about growing up on the reservation. What was it like? What did you do? What are the stories? So the very first edition, I guess you'd say, of Rabbit Moon was those stories. Now here it is 21 years later. John is actually, my husband is from Longville. He has grown up there. And we moved back to Minnesota to help take care of his mother and father some years ago. And I got involved with Vicky. I was writing grants at the time for Legacy Chorale, choir in Brainerd. And so I got involved with Vicky, and she said, well, you need to be writing. And I said, well, I'm not a Minnesota author. I'm not from Minnesota. She said, you're in Minnesota now. You're a Minnesota author. So through her, she encouraged me to write a grant. And I rewrote the book, and my publisher said, turn it into a series so that you can write, more than one. So this is book one of the series. So I did have to change it a little bit to make it match up to be an ongoing kind of a thing about Marion Sinclair. And book number two is at the publishers or the editors, I should say. And hopefully it will be out in August in time for the Hackensack Arts Book and Arts Festival.
That's fantastic. So you didn't write this book intending it to be a series.
No, I wrote it originally just because I had all of these stories and I just put them all together and did it for my kids. I put it on Amazon, for that sort of thing.
All right. So how many stories do you think this is going to be the second book that's coming out. So do you think you might have, your publisher might want 3, 4, or 5 more books?
Well, there's 3 planned. And after that, I'm not sure if I have any more stories that I'm going to we have to start making them up more than I do already. But at least 3. I'm working on the 3rd one right now. So there's going to be at least 3.
All right, that's fantastic. And that's the writing that first draft it's the hardest part.
Yes.
And then the second hardest part is making those changes in the second draft. So back to the story. You have a main character, Marion Sinclair. She's what does she do for a living in the book?
In the books, in the new version of the book, she is an end-of-life doula. Okay. My original career was as a physician, and I did a lot of work with end of life cancer patients. And I thought that I met a lot of doulas, and I was very impressed with. They're amazing people. They're like midwives that helped, deliver the babies. I was an OBGYN as well. And I was very impressed with them. They are compassionate. They're just wonderful people. So I made her an end of life doula because I had a character at the beginning of the book that was dying. And I said, well, what reason would I have for her to be there? So her being an end of life doula, I don't think is a major component of the book, but it's definitely something that I gave some thought to, that I wanted her to have that sort of a character, that she was a compassionate, caring,
sort of a gravitas to her character,
and sort of an alone person too, because it's very much you and just one other person. You're not involved in society a lot. So
she grew up in the Navajo lands. What are the circumstances that she finds herself as a child in the Navajo lands?
Very much like my own, only for her, it's a father who is a school teacher at a boarding school. And her mother died, I think, when she was 10 or 11 years old. Not my situation isn't like that at all, but that's Marion's situation. And she is Anglo. I wrote from an Anglo point of view. On the reservation, we say Anglo instead of. Some people ask me, what's Anglo? I said, oh, that's white people. So Belaganas, as we say on the reservation. But I wanted to make it from a point of view that I have an authenticity for writing about. So she is Anglo, as I am Anglo. And then many of the characters in the book, you read the book, are Navajo people. She works with the Navajo police sergeant, very much in the tone of Tony Hillerman, those type of books.
Although both returns,
guys are native.
When she returns, because circumstances bring her back in after she has left, to live elsewhere. Now she's back on the reservation.
Yes.
So you can tell us a little bit about that.
Her best friend that she grew up with, Evangelina So, sends her a message that says, I need you. And she ends up going back to the reservation. She hasn't left. She hasn't been back for years because she had a breakup with her boyfriend that she had been with all the way through high school, and he ended up marrying Vanjie. And so, she leaves and says, but she got involved with college and she lives in Flagstaff. She doesn't live that far away. But when Vanjie calls her, they've sort of kept in touch over the years. When Vanjie calls her, she feels like she owes her to go back, because Vanjie was very much a touchstone for her when she was growing up. And you have to have a touchstone, I would say, when you're growing up on the reservation. I was, but when When I first moved out there, I was one of, I believe, two students in my elementary school who were Anglo. And we did not speak Navajo, of course. And you very much need somebody that's involved in the that's a Native American person to tell you the ropes and what's going on and what are we talking about. And most of our teachers were Anglo, I will say. They would come straight out of college, usually to the reservation, teach for a year, and then I would imagine now that they were doing it to pay off their student loans. Very rarely did one of them stay on the reservation for more than a year at a time. But, and of course, they were as lost. They would come on the reservation, they were totally lost in the culture. But for me, living there, I needed that touchstone with the culture, somebody to tell me, oh, this is how we live life here, because it was quite different.
So did you have that kind of a friend? Because this book is based on some of your experiences.
Yes, I definitely had a Vanjie. So
Okay. And how long did you spend on the reservation?
I was there all the way, grade school, high school, 1 year of college in Farmington, and then John and I got married. So I would say until that first year of marriage, what were we, 21, 22? So, most of my growing up years, I guess you'd say.
And then you went right to medical school to become a doctor
I went to college first and
with science in your.
oh yes, oh yes. I majored in science. I majored in biology and chemistry. And John and I went to college together and had a family, had a son at the time. And then I ended up going to medical school. I was in my mid-30s, I would say, when I went to medical school, and we had our daughter by then. Our son and our daughter are 7 years apart because that was our medical school years. And then Meredith was born. Our daughter's name's Meredith. So,
All right. Well, that's a good question for, you know what? We're kind of a small group in here. So if you have a question, feel free to shout it out. That was a really good question. Thank you so much. Well, like I said, circumstances bring Marin back to the reservation, and that's when the suspense, intrigue, mystery happens. We don't have to get into that part of it, although I sort of liken it, for those who haven't read the book, to kind of Killers of the Flower Moon, kind of Chinatown. So kind of a mixture of those two stories, and it's very, very, very compelling. And have you had an opportunity to go back to the Navajo reservation like your character?
oh yes, oh yes. John and I have gone back. It's a beautiful part of the country, and I miss it very much. So I try to go back to the Southwest. We especially enjoy driving through Colorado, Utah. I'm a member of Western Writers of America, and they usually have their conferences somewhere in the West. A couple of years ago, it was in Rapid City, South Dakota. That was a beautiful part of the country. But yes, we did go back. My school, my home is gone. However, in the 1980s, the Navajo Council decided they wanted to do away with all the boarding schools on the reservation. I think there's three. I think I read somewhere there's maybe three boarding schools left on the reservation. But by and large, the Navajo Council voted to have them gone. And they are literally gone. You can drive out to where I lived in Sinosti, and I think I found a little piece of my driveway, a little piece of cement that would have been the driveway of our house. And this was a big boarding school. I'd say probably 100 or so students that lived there. Maybe 3 streets of government housing. One of those houses I lived in, I would say there were probably 20, maybe 25 houses for all the staff, all the teachers, all the people that worked in the dormitories that were there. And it's not there now. It's just back to desert.
They didn't turn them into veterans hospitals because for Native Americans, it's hard for them to get veteran care close to where their people are.
Yes, there are several Native American hospitals. There's one in Window Rock, Gallup, Shiprock has one for sure. I went to high school in Shiprock, and a lot of my friends, the Navajo boy that I dated all the way through high school, his father was the first and only for a long time Navajo doctor at the hospital in Shiprock. Their last name was McKenzie. And so there are health facilities dotted around the reservation, but yeah, they are kind of like living in northern Minnesota, kind of few and far between. We have to drive a mile or an hour in any direction, it seems like, from Longville to get somewhere. So
We lived in Big Fork. So.
yes, exactly.
Wow. Boarding schools, and that's a controversial topic from
Very
years,
much so.
with the revelations of Canadian and American
Yes.
boarding schools.
Yes, and here with the Lakota and the Dakota and the Pipestone, all of that. But where we lived, and as far as I know, most of the reservation. I remember the Navajo reservation's huge. It covers all the Four Corners area, not Utah, Colorado, Arizona. New Mexico, a little bit of Colorado, but. I don't remember, and I know that there was not the kind of abuse that they were talking about on some of these things that we hear now. I think we would have known. I mean, I rode the school bus every day. I went to public school. We didn't go to the boarding school. The kids of the staff went to the nearest, and a lot of the Navajo kids went to public school too. You didn't have to go to the boarding school if you didn't want to, but. I think we would have known. I knew every single teacher, every single worker, most of the students. We were over there. We went to all their parties, and we went to all the Halloween things, Christmas things, and mostly every weekend. Now, keep in mind, this is mid-60s when I first went out there. Mostly every weekend, the boarding school would be surrounded with wagons and horses where the parents had come to pick up their children. So they would come and get their kids for the weekend and take them home for the weekend and then bring them back again. So you weren't there all the time. Most of the kids that were in the boarding school where I lived went back and forth over the weekends. And I'm sure there was a lot of homesick issues. I remember some of the little kids, the little kindergartners in first grade. My mother taught first grade, and they would be so homesick when they would first start. So I don't know if I'd go so far to say as it was a good system, but we were invited in by the Navajo people. The Navajo Council wanted the schools there. They wanted their kids to learn English. They wanted their kids to learn how to fit into a white society. And they invited the boarding schools to come in originally. Now, when they took them out in the 80s, if you remember the 70s and the 80s, it was fun when a lot of the Navajo people were going to college themselves. They were becoming teachers themselves. A lot of the Navajo people came in and took over the teaching and the responsibilities. And so I don't think it was a bad idea for them, but things evolve, things change, and it was they said, we don't really need you here anymore. So
the Navajo pretty much it seems to me most Native Americans are that you have your lineup of the men get to make the decisions. Is that gone away now?
A lot of the council members are made up of men, but a lot of them are made up of women. Navajo, they are a matrilineal tribe. So the women are very much in charge of a lot of things on the reservation, and everything that you are as a person is the matrilineal line. Like the children belong to the mother and the mother's line. It doesn't go patrilineal, it goes matrilineal. So the women have a big say. The women are definitely in charge of anything that goes on in the home and in the hogan. They're the bosses. So, but the men have a say in things too. And a lot of the Navajo Council is men, but I wouldn't say that the women don't have a voice. So,
no.
Isn't that the hereditary business goes through the mother?
Yes, hereditary goes to the mother.
Yeah.
Definitely. The women own the land. The women own the women own the family properties. Yes. And that was a big issue in the 1800s when white people came in, and this is in Killers of the Flower Moon too, I think. I have a good friend that is an Osage. She's a writer, and she and I talk about things like this, and that a lot of the people came in to try to take the land, and they would get rid of the men, at least on the Navajo reservation. And I think a lot of it on the Osage too, the women inherited, and they would get rid of the men and then try to marry into the women. And then that's how they would gain the land would be from marrying into, the women. But it's the women who own the property usually on the reservation. And I believe it's still that way. I don't think a lot of that has changed, but
Something to explore in the second book, maybe.
yes.
Or third.
It's very much a now and a then, a now and a then. She goes back and forth remembering her life on the reservation and what it was like growing up there. The second book is not like that at all. The second book is much more just a action, suspense, mystery. And I don't have a lot of backflash sort of things of remembering what her life was then.
Would you provide their understanding of medicine with your understanding?
I tried as much. I try to. I read about it, and I of course now there's a lot more than one Navajo doctor in the United States, but I do try to keep up in some ways, but in other ways not so much. I've kind of moved on, I think, in the medical field.
I think
if you ever do.
But I think, yeah, in this first book in Rabbit Moon, there, it does go back and forth between adulthood and childhood. And I think those childhood remembrances are very effective, and they do set up the events later in the book. And especially, I don't know how much we want to get into it, because I do absolutely recommend this book. It's a very, very good book. So I don't want to do any plot spoilers. So like for the last half of the book. So
Speaking in our book club, when we encounter an author who does this present and back, we get all confused and we don't know what's going on. But I thought you did a great job.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
there is some storycraft in there. So yeah, I think I think you do label the chapters present
Yes, now
and
and then.
past. Okay.
Or did I say past, present? Anyway, I did
I
label.
was so busy reading, I didn't look at
Yes.
the chapters.
And that was different too. I did not do that in the first one because I was just writing down for my kids mostly and writing down memories.
Mhm.
But then I took a few writing classes and was told how this is how you do a flashback and this is how you should do this. And so hopefully it came out a little bit better.
Okay, so early in the book we meet we have Marin. How old is she in those remembrances?
In the remembrances, I think she's probably 14, 13, 11, 12,
Okay.
somewhere in there. The
Kind of vague.
the thens.
Yeah. And then she meets a summer visitor, Sheldon. So
Yeah.
Sheldon is also Anglo,
Yeah.
and he's visiting for the summer. Do you want to tell about the circumstances and in the book, and it's what he does that when they kind of first meet, that's kind of a little dangerous of when he
The snake business.
the snake.
Oh yes. Sheldon is an amalgamation of people that came out to the reservation in the summertime. Remember, I lived in a boarding school, so with a lot of teachers that were in their little teacher houses. They were out for the summer mostly, but some teachers stayed all year long, especially if you worked in the schools. We stayed all year long. And their nephews, nieces, whoever would come out and visit. So Sheldon is kind of an amalgamation of all the kids that used to come out from the cities in the summertime that were absolutely clueless about where they lived. And the part about him catching the rattlesnake, that actually happened with one of the kids that was out there. And the rest of us were absolutely horrified most of the time at the things that they would do. Now, you have to know too that Navajo culture, snakes are no. You don't mess with snakes. You don't touch a snake. You have nothing to do with snakes. They are very much taboo in the Navajo form of religion. And if you touch a snake or have anything to do with a snake, you have to go and be, what would we call it, purified by a singer, a hatape, who is like a medicine man, sort of. And they have to give you the whole purifying, cleansing thing if you have been exposed to a snake. So snakes are bad. So here this kid comes out for the summer and goes out on the playground where all of us were out there. That
Yeah.
really did happen, and catches a rattlesnake. And we were absolutely appalled. Not just that he caught it, but that he was messing with a snake. He just didn't do that. So
that was based on a real life event.
yes.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so yeah, that seems a little dangerous. And then but it's a good introduction for us to be, because since you have a little bit of experience being on the reservation, if we especially as kids were to go onto a reservation not knowing any of the culture, and we're just visiting, we're just trying to have fun, maybe we're a little dumb and haven't learned that snakes are pretty dangerous. That kind of gives us an in into this culture, and a teachable moment. So I thought that was a very effective way to introduce the characters and Marin's sense. I don't know. Well, again, we won't talk about what happens later in the book. So mythology, and basically what mythology is, the definition of it is a religion's, any religion, but their story of the beginning of the world. So all religions include, Christianity. That's the term. I took a college class, so that is the absolute term. The mythology for the Native American people in the book, in the Navajo Nation, it plays into it. I mean, Rabbit Moon is itself imagery from that. Without giving too much away, because that's a revelation at the end, can you explain kind of what that title means?
The Rabbit Moon.
The Rabbit Moon, and kind of how it differs from how we have made stories about the moon, white European culture.
European culture, I would say by and large, from what I've read, is the man in the moon. And I can remember when I first went to the reservation being told about the rabbit in the moon, and very indignant, because I was like, it's a man in the moon. There's no rabbit, it's a man in the moon. And so the title Rabbit Moon I used trying to convey what it's like to go to a different place where people look at things differently, and how you have to start looking at things differently and say, oh, that is a rabbit in the moon. Because if you look at the full moon, you can't see that it's a rabbit. There's ears up at the top, and the body, and anyway, I'll have to show you a picture of full moon.
Well, it's on the cover of your book. So I'm going to go, after this, I'm going to go look.
I don't know if the rabbit is on there or not, but no.
Oh, it's not. Oh, okay.
Pretty small.
So, yeah.
But I think I have a display back there that I could show you that's got the rabbit in it. Anyway, it was mostly to convey living in a different culture. And, the culture that you live in is not the culture that everybody lives in. And sometimes you have to make a few allowances for other cultures, and what you're going to let in, and and how you're going to get along, for me, with the other students that I ended up being on the school bus with, and as far as they were concerned, I was the odd one out. I was on the Jesus road. Well, you must be on the Jesus road, and that, the Christianity and everything that I had been taught growing up. And I had to at least be open to the concept that not everybody thinks the way that you do. I had never thought, and I think a lot of us still don't realize, that people think differently. Not everybody. Like,
you get this Big Dipper. It's a very odd.
Yes, the stars are, yes.
But they have the Southern Cross.
Yes.
And I don't know if that's Anglo or not. I don't know what other nations.
But it's still different. The stars, you know, the constellations and everything that you
That's what I
see.
wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
Is the moon different too? That I never bothered looking at the moon. The sun went under right away, and I just could see the stars.
I wouldn't think it would be different. On the equator, it's just the stars that,
Yeah.
because the Earth is turning,
But the
but
moon
that
is
would,
staying-
yes.
I don't know.
Well, that kind of we had last month in for May we had Nancy Atkinson, and she's a journalist who covers the moon landing, and she brought a presentation about the landing of the moon. It was a very, very good presentation. We hope to have up on YouTube at some point. And I thought when I made the schedule, I thought that's very interesting. I would do a moon theme back to back. So, and we do these bookends once a month. So I just thought that was a nice little convergence, unintentional,
Uh-huh.
to have two straight moon sort of themes back to back. But okay, so that does kind of does. I get the feeling that Marin kind of starts adopting a little bit of the beliefs. Maybe because I think she's over the course of her life identified with the people she knows on the reservation. So towards the end, I think we have a little bit of that exploration of faith, but it seems to involve those two kind of conflicting realities. It's kind of a beautiful moment in the book. Is that what's a good question for that? Because that was just one of my observations about it. Is that do you think that helps her as a character survive what happens to her? Being able to kind of to reach out to both spirits, so to speak, or spiritual realms.
Absolutely. I think so.
I think so, yes. Everything, but I'm of the mindset that anything that you learn, anything that at least consider it and a different way of looking at things, a different way of thinking. And yes, I think Vanjie so very much shows that to her. And the second book as well, the people that she meets and the things that she definitely believes in God, but then Navajo people believe in God too. But your definitions are what is so important. What is your definition of, a great spirit? Our languages may be different, but our concepts are probably, or I think, very much the same. So
her boyfriend, his philosophy of full speed ahead. If you're going to live, you got to live.
yes.
That saved her life at the end.
Yes, very much so. Edison, yes. Edison is more of a made-up character in the book, but he's definitely an amalgamation of a lot of the people that I knew on the guys that I knew on the reservation. And the part about the movie with Billy Jack, the movie definitely is a huge, huge thing. And that was probably in the 70s, I believe, somewhere in the early 70s when Billy Jack came out. And he's still an icon. He was part Navajo and he was a soldier. Remember, the Vietnam War was still going on back in the day. We had a lot of protests and a lot of things that went on. When I was still living on the reservation, when I was in high school, is when American Indian movement came through from the Dakotas, and they actually took over the entire town of Shiprock. We were in school at the time, and all the Anglo students, we went out with the Navajo kids. We went out and sat and protested. We very strongly identified with our native friends versus being Anglo. We set out too and did all the demonstrations too. And we're not going to school. And of course, I have to admit, we weren't all that upset that school had been closed down. the week or so that American Indian movement was
Of course not.
there, but and it was Navajo movement at all. It was definitely came from the Dakotas. It was a Dakota thing. So
All right. Well, thanks for giving us a background of the story and the inspirations from it. Since Bookends is a series about the writing process, we can start in on that. So what you told me was your reasoning for writing the book in the first place in the early aughts was to inform your children of what you went through on as you were growing up.
yes. And they're just like I used to ask my mom, what was it like growing up on a farm? And
Mhm.
her parents were farmers, and my dad grew up on a ranch, and we had horses out on the reservation. He was a horse trainer,
Mhm.
and he was kind of the vet too, because the nearest vet was in Farmington, which was a couple hours away. But yeah, I for writing was stories. Tell me about
Mhm.
what it was like when you were a kid. I mean, every kid must ask that of their parents. What was it like when you were a kid?
So the snake story was among them, and
That was one of the ones, and but several of them. So a lot of the stories in the book are actual things that happened, but
Mhm.
they've been embroidered on, I would say, by me. We did have a kid on the reservation that jumped off the mesa and broke his leg, but he didn't die. So
Mhm.
it's just one of those things. It's part of growing up, climbing the mesas, riding the horses. It's just a different lifestyle than living in town.
Exploration, just
Yes.
getting out there in the world.
Just like every kid
Yeah,
does. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
I thought your discussion of nuclear waste sites was interesting
Mhm.
in relation to the Navajo Nation.
And I think, and there are still so many uranium mines that have still not been closed or
I mean,
cleaned. Uh,
If that was factual,
there is supposedly there was a mandate, gosh, years ago to clean up the mines, but they haven't really done a good job of cleaning them up. I The Navajo people, a lot of them, they are sheep herders. A lot of them keep cattle, although sheep is probably the main thing that they raise, and they keep their sheep pinned in some of these empty mines. And there's the radiation effects have just been, I worked in a mine when I was a teenager as well, and years later I developed thyroid cancer, and the doctor said, if I didn't know better, I think you'd been exposed to uranium or something. I said, well, I used to work summers in a uranium mine. My best friend's dad owned a
Mhm.
uranium mine up in the Lukachuka Mountains. And so and the tailings are still there, and the water runs through the tailings. And then, of course, the radiation poisoning gets carried into the water. So, yeah, I think it's still a major issue. And as far as I know, there are still a lot of open mines up there.
Well,
Excuse me.
there you go. And that sort of forms that Chinatown-esque dramatic circumstances that kicks off the intrigue of the story. And as well, yeah, if you had a friend that had whose dad had a radium mine, you have a young character who carries around a piece of uranium rock that
Yeah.
glows in her pocket. So
We did not have badges.
yeah.
There was nothing to indicate that your level of radiation. And a lot of the Navajo people have, the government did eventually put in a program, I believe in the 90s, of compensating people that had developed blood dyscrasias, leukemias, things like that. And I think the compensation was around $100,000, but you have to prove that you worked in a uranium mine, and there has to be records. And that's a lot of what this book is
Yeah.
that there are. There certainly would be no record of me working in this uranium mine. I mean, you show up, you work, you get paid. You may come back the next day, you may not. Very few of the actual mining workers. Now, I'm not talking about the
Mhm.
friend that owned it, but a lot of them are just I don't know what you'd say,
Day laborers.
labor
Yeah.
kind of thing, where you're in and out.
well,
So
my husband worked in a missile site down underground running a jack without ear protection because they didn't. Nobody worried about that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now he has.
And now, yes.
But it's not only that. So
Sure.
somewhat genetic.
But a lot of the blood cancers really were totally related to the radiation poisoning.
Yeah.
And I used to sunbathe on the tailings outside of the
Oh my goodness.
outside of the mine, great place to lay out here, put your blanket down and sunbathe, my best friend and I.
So,
Yeah, cancer.
oh my goodness, yeah. So when does that become part of this reminiscence about your childhood and then start to form into a story? What you make this decision, okay, I think this might make a good story, but do you decide, oh, I want a mystery, a suspense about uh the uranium industry and sort of the corruption? Is that how you make, or do you set out to kind of research it so that something profound goes with your childhood reminiscences?
The first three books that I did plan them out, and I did try to make them about an issue on the reservation, the Navajo reservation, the Navajo Nation. That's why the first one is the uranium mining, because I can remember when that was a huge issue. The second book is more about the alcoholism and the drug abuse that takes place on the reservation. So book number 2 is going to be very much about bootlegging alcohol. The Navajo reservation is dry, and it still is dry. There are no, but then the casinos came in about 10, 15 years ago, and you can have alcohol in the casinos. There's 4 around the reservation right now, I believe, right outside of Gallup. Farmington has one. Flagstaff has one. These are right on the edges of the reservation, but you can buy alcohol in the casino. So that's been a huge issue with the Navajo people because it has really led to a lot of the bootlegging. The Navajo police that I've talked to say that, people are stealing the alcohol, stockpiling it in their house or wherever, and they're selling it on the reservation, and it's still illegal to have alcohol on the reservation. But it's also a very big issue because the younger Navajo people, by and large, not all of them, but they're like, the government doesn't have the right to tell me whether or not I can drink. The government doesn't have the right to tell me that there can't be a bar on the reservation. And I will tell you, growing up, that all around the reservation, right on the edge of the border, there would be a bar. So you didn't have to go very far off the reservation to get to a bar. But it's an issue, does the government have the right to tell me?
Owned or
White, usually Anglo. But the issue is, it's the Navajo Council that is voting the nation dry. It's not. Then they still vote it every year. They decide, no, we don't want alcohol legal on the reservation. But there is definitely, as you would think, there's a lot of controversy whether or not there should be. And there is alcohol on the reservation. And the young people are saying, well, you just are making it easy for it to be bootlegged. So the second book is about the alcohol and the bootlegging. The third book, and I'm not totally into the whole, I've just started it, is the missing and murdered Indigenous women and Two-Spirit people on the reservation. Two-Spirit people on the reservation are, I guess you'd say, the LGBTQ plus people. We call them Two-Spirits on the reservation because it's not so much an issue. How can I explain it? Two-Spirits in Navajo is a man who understands the ways of a woman, or a woman who understands the ways of a man. And it's not so much a derogatory or not derogatory, so much as it is a fact of life. This person is a two-spirited person. So and they are very much disappearing and murdered as well. It isn't just the women that are missing. Many of the Two-Spirit people get taken as well. So the third book is going to examine a lot of that, which has been done. I know Marcy Reardon's newest book was very much about the missing and murdered Indigenous women issue. And it's a controversial issue, I guess you'd say, for me as an Anglo person to write. But I talked to my Navajo friends and my Osage friend, and they are, if it's your story, you have a right to that story. And I think it's probably every reservation is unique. Every tribe is unique. I get questions sometimes from people about the Lakota or the Dakota or the Cherokee, and I'm like, Navajo here. I grew up on Navajo reservation. There's a lot of differences. It's not the same. And so if I do decide, then I think it will be written from the Navajo point of view but do we have an issue with it? Yes, it's very much an issue on every reservation. I'm not sure on the Navajo reservation. I think a lot of it for us is we grew up so free. You hitchhike, you're on the road, or you're related to everybody that's all around you. You might be at your aunt's house, or, well, I don't know where he is. You could be at your uncle's house or your grandmother's house, or your grandmother thinks you're at your aunt's house. I mean, we could have been at very, very many different places at any one time. And I think that in itself probably makes it easier to kidnap or trust. Somebody stops to give you a ride and you don't think twice about it, because that on the reservation, if you're able to give somebody a ride, you give somebody a ride. And I wouldn't have thought twice about getting into a car with anybody that stopped to pick me up. But that's got to change, and I think it has changed a lot in the past years. But I think there is still an issue. Well, obviously, there's still an issue of what's happening.
Having intermarriages, and by that, even years ago, Swedes and Norwegians, that would have been a mixed marriage, but that's changed considerably. Is there that kind of hierarchy of tribes? Well, if they're from this tribe, then I wouldn't fuss, right? If they're from this tribe, I will.
We have a lot of intermarriages, and a lot of them they're different native have married native or Anglo. I mean, yes, there's not really that much of a stigma attached to, as far as I remember growing up, of whether you were married to somebody from your own tribe or even married to an Anglo person. Maybe there is more now. I haven't lived there for many years, but I don't get the impression that there really is. Did I have a lot of prejudice issues in school? Not really. I don't really remember that being a big thing. Now, like I said, I'm old now, so things have changed over the years, but
it's hard for us whites to realize that we do have white privileges. I'm just realizing it as I look back at my life. A lot of white privilege, and I never viewed as white privilege.
Yes.
I just did it.
But I think it's more so out here off the reservation than it is on the reservation. On the reservation, I felt more like I was the one that needed to make up the shortfall. You're the one that doesn't know the language. You're the one that doesn't know what's going on here. But off the reservation, very much so. I think the Native kids, once they leave the reservation, they have the same difficulty that I had going on. They have that coming out. And there's a lot of prejudice. I mean, you have to admit there is a lot of prejudice too against the Native kids as well.
I would love to read a book, psychological book, on the difference between the psychology of the prevalent and the minority and the majority.
Yes.
Because we're all minority in some way, and we're all a majority.
Depends.
We really are.
Depends on where you live. Yep. Who you're around.
I think you kind of touch on that a bit in the book. I think you do, with situations that characters get into, their approaches based on, what culture they grew up in. So this is a good book to read for that, I think, and maybe not a, like a textbook, but
Yeah.
yes.
that's one of the things that I'd like for people to take away from the book and the books. The second one as well is your culture is your culture. It's not everybody's culture. And everybody's it's different. And you might need to be the one that try to be more understanding, open up a little bit to what's going on. People are people, but like you're saying, the Swedes and the Norwegians, it's like you need to
expand your horizon.
Yes, that's good. Expand your horizon.
And as a freshman in college, and I was just a little farm girl, and I was one of not the town kids, not the particular denomination and stuff like this. And so I just tried to blend in as best I can, because I was taught that we always give people the benefit of a doubt. And then that makes such a difference. So I saw so much of this as learning opportunities. But then, now that I realize how prejudicial some of this stuff was, I thought I was white privileged and didn't even know it.
Yeah, hopefully as we get older, you realize you don't have you're not the know-it-all and be-it-all that you think you are sometimes. But there are some things that she hangs on to, she continues with her own belief in God. She continues, but she also, Maren, I'm talking about, I try to make her more accepting, more understanding. And I also try very hard to show what some of the prejudice is. I mean, you got to remember when I grew up, right off the reservation in Farmington, there were signs on the doors in some of the establishments downtown, some of the stores that said no Native people in the store.
Sundown.
And yes,
Sundown
and
town,
there were sundown laws. And I dated a Navajo boy all the way through high school. And I can remember going to town with him once and having the sign on the door, no Native people, and him stopping and me being like, what's the problem? I never even noticed those signs before. But, things like that still happen. And, very much so. I'm sure with people of other races as well, that.
Is your second book going to be in paperback?
Oh yes, it'll still be. A hard copy is very expensive. The first publisher did hard copy, and they were like $34, $35 a piece. And I would go and sell them. I'd go to book fairs and whatever, and that's crazy. So I'm like, no, they're definitely soft. They're going to be soft. If I have anything to say about it, anyway.
Well, we can wrap this up. By the way, I know what you mean by the Norwegians and mixed marriages, because I'm Norwegian and French, so you can imagine. Well, all right, but yeah, we're being a little kidding about that. So we can wrap it up because we've been here for an hour. My goodness, we've been talking for an hour. But I did want to ask you about this book seems to have a second life of when you decided to go to explain that where you've had it published for 10 or 15 years, and then do you have that desire to see it out there one more time? You go through the Blue Cottage Agency, which we have a good relationship with. So thank you, Blue Cottage, for hooking this up. Can you explain that process of getting it out there before the public a second time?
That process very much has to do with my working life. I was working as a physician, and I'm in pathology, and I retired in 2014. And then it's like, well, what do we do now? All of a sudden, I had all this free time, and wow, now I could write. And then, like I said, we moved to Minnesota, and I found out that I was a Minnesota author from Vicki. Well, you live in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And Minnesota has all kinds of arts and funding, and what you were reading with the Springboard for the Arts. I just got a grant from Springboard for the Arts as well. They are very supportive of your writing. So I thought, well, I like to write. So I started going to these things, and I went to, where authors speak, and I went to hear Alan Eskins in Hackensack. And that's what, 3 or 4 years ago now, I guess. And he was amazing. And I asked him a lot of questions. And I always remember he said, take writing classes. He was a lawyer, or still is a lawyer, I assume. And he said the very first thing I did was for a solid year, I took every class in writing that I knew about, that I found out about. He took a lot of classes to the Loft, in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And he said, take writing classes. And I thought, I've been writing most of my life. I wrote for medical journals and I wrote grants for medical grants and things like that. I thought, I don't know how to write. And but I said, okay, this guy's a really good writer, really good author. So I signed up for a class at the Loft on revising a novel. I didn't even, because I already had Rabbit Moon.
Right.
So I took a class on revision. And boy, did I learn a lot of stuff about writing. And I had no idea. I mean, you don't know what you don't know. And I found out there was a lot of things that I did not know, probably still don't know. So I just started taking classes and published this next and republished Rabbit Moon. Blue Cottage said, rewrite the whole thing, turn it into a series. And that's what I'm doing. And I'm still taking classes. I take classes from Candace Seimer. She does a pencil to paper classes that are really, really good. I go to Camp Candace, we call it, where we go to to St. Benedictine's Monastery for a week. And we're taught by Sheila O'Connor, who's one of the really well-known writers here in Minnesota. And her last book was called Evidence of Thee. And she's an excellent teacher. We spend a week with her. And there's a lot of things to learn about writing. And I'm still learning, I'm still practicing. So
as
book two. Wake up.
Can't wait. And as a
prejudice, though.
as a prolific writer of first drafts, never getting beyond the first draft, I think I might need that revision class. That sounds, where do I begin? Yeah, it is, because I think it's revision. That first one is harder than writing the first draft.
I think it's a bit of revision, but
I've purchased many books for the library here about revision, that revising that first novel. So. All right. Well, Jan, thank you very much for joining us today here at the Wadena City Library. Jan D. Payne, the book is called Rabbit Moon, and it's available on Amazon if you want to get it, if you watch this on YouTube.
The best place to get it, though, is BookBaby.
BookBaby?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, BookBaby. I think I published through BookBaby, and then they distribute it to all the stores and all the other places. They distribute it to Amazon. So it's not like what I would call an Amazon published book. It's published by BookBaby, and then they send it out to all the places.
Okay.
So I have a site on BookBaby, and I have a website, and you can publish it or buy it on the website as well.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much. Are there any other questions for Jan Payne today?
This was awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope you enjoy the book.
I enjoyed that.
Good.
All right. Thank you so much. And if you're online, feel like subscribing when this video eventually hits. Go ahead, hit the subscribe to BookEnds or Wadena City Library, whatever we're going to call that when we get this set up. Otherwise, thank you very much. The next one is June 28th, Monica Lee. And we are going to have John Noltner second Saturday of August with Lessons on the Road to Peace.